special tonight. I just found out that our dear friend, and actually she was my family, Mary Kathleen Johnson, Dr. Kay Johnson as she was known, passed away. She was 90, she had a long life, but she was my last remaining connection to my dad's side of the family, as he was an only child. I'm an only child, and he had some hard times in life and lost everything. So she barricaded herself into my grandparents' house, which he unfortunately lost, and said their granddaughter needs to have these portraits and these special items, and she just was feisty and went in to salvage what she could for me. I have a few pieces of silver and china and these few photos. Everything else was lost, unfortunately. He married my mom, Melissa Rooks, in 1970. Rewinding a bit, he went to College of William and Mary, studying music. You could see the connection between my parents revolved around music. My grandparents were members of our church, First Presbyterian Church of Wilmette, and they were married there in 1970. My grandparents, Ruth and Newton Rooks, were quite close with Evelyn and Wallace Moore, after which is named Wallace Moore Fellowship Center. These are my other grandparents in Florida, my dad's parents, and this is shortly after I was born. I was born in 1972. The reason, and this was my great-grandmother and my great-aunt, and my dad only had his grandparents on one side living and one cousin, so that was my relations. This is my Aunt Kay, as I called her, with me when I was just a baby. Very tragically, my dad, 3 months after I was born, we celebrated Christmas down in Fernandina Beach, Florida, now known as Amelia Island Plantation, but it was a sleepy town back then. So my family on that side was always very small. This was my great-grandmother feeding me on Christmas of 1972. And there was a very tragic thing that happened that year. On the 27th, they were driving back to Georgia, and on a 2-lane highway, we don't really know what happened. Suspected someone fell asleep at the wheel, and everyone in the car died except for kind of a distant cousin to me that I really don't know. So my dad lost his aunt and his grandmother remaining on that side, his remaining relatives, 2 days after Christmas, the year I was born. My dad had a lot of troubled times, and I think that's why I resonate so strongly with the Family Promise program at our church. My dad was homeless. He was the most gifted musician, and because my parents divorced when I was in 8th grade, my family on my mom's side doesn't like to think back to memories of my dad. So my Aunt Kay, who just passed away, was my one remaining connection, who really knew stories of their childhood. They were both only children, and they grew up like siblings. So my dad really lost everything. It was homeless, and so I resonate so strongly with the Family Promise Program and to give those folks dignity. And I was just telling a friend in our congregation the other day a very special memory of, he was homeless and in a shelter in a church in Evanston, and of course with his love for life and love for music, he just played the piano the whole day for the folks that were there with him. He was a homeless person there, but he played so they could sing Christmas carols. And by the next year, he had been able to secure an apartment and a job, and we went back and we led Christmas carols, and that's a very fond memory for me. Kay remembered the good stuff. She never talked bad about my dad. She always remembered the good things. So it's a real loss that I don't have someone who only remembers the good when they were around me. But fortunately, my dad turned things around, and one of my best memories is of him visiting me in Switzerland when I was an au pair. Somehow he managed to save and scrimp and pinch enough money to get there, and we stayed in hostels, and the guys thought he was so cool. We would bike and we went river rafting, and I mean just hike and everything. I was also married for a brief period of time. I was married at our church, and it is because of my dad. Peggy was newly on staff. It was because of my dad that there is now a piano in our sanctuary, because I needed for him to play the prelude for 30 minutes, because he was just the most gifted pianist and organist. And Peggy Masella played Here Comes the Bride so he could walk me down the aisle. He came to where I was in residential treatment in Arizona. You can see I had a feeding tube with his wife Mary that he married right at the end of his life. And I saw him 2 weeks before he passed away. Complications from pneumonia. And I was 29. We had reconciled and the past, and that was largely due to Mary, his new wife, and to my Aunt Kay. He's buried in Fernandina Beach, Florida, and Kay has faithfully put flowers for him on every holiday since then. 2001, the year of 9/11. Shortly after 9/11 happened, he passed away. So it's a real loss, because I feel like I lost that side of the family. But the memory of my dad lives on in large part thanks to Mary Kathleen Johnson.